Why did Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu fire his defense minister, Yoav Galant, this week? Why did he do it on election night in the United States? Why is he getting rid of his defense minister right at the moment when Israel is facing a 7-front war and the supreme leader of Iran is vowing, in fact, to launch a massive new attack against Israel now that the American elections are over? Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg in Israel, just outside of Jerusalem at the All Israel News headquarters. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of All Israel News, and I want to give you a little bit of analysis because this has been a fast-moving story and a major story this week. When Israelis went to bed on Tuesday night, the American elections were in motion. So they knew that on the one hand, when Israelis woke up, we'd be looking to the West to find out who won, right? But to the East, we were watching, when will Iran launch this attack? How big will it be? And then how will Israel respond, both in terms of shooting down all those missiles and protecting Israeli citizens, but also what type of counterstrike might we launch? So Israelis went to bed Tuesday night sort of with a split screen in their minds, like looking east to the Iranian regime threat and looking west to who would be the next president of the United States. Well, we have an answer, of course, to one of those. We now know that President Donald Trump was reelected overwhelmingly in a huge landslide, historic comeback, never seen before in American history. And because Israelis so support Donald Trump, they wanted him vastly more than they wanted Kamala Harris. So Israelis are feeling good and peaceful about that. Not so peaceful about how we're facing the Iranian threat, because we're expecting any hour, any day, that attack will come. Unless the Iranian regime is recalculating because Donald Trump is coming into power and maybe they don't want to cross a red line with Trump. But in the middle of all that came a story that none of us expected to happen on Tuesday night, and that was Prime Minister Netanyahu fired his defense minister, Yoav Galant. Now, on All Israel News, I've been writing, and the other staff have been writing about the very real likelihood that Netanyahu would be firing Yoav Galant at some point soon. We didn't expect it Tuesday night. But we've been writing and sort of preparing people, this is probably going to happen. Why do I say that? Because for much of the last year, almost the entire year, Netanyahu and Defense Minister Gallant have been in huge, major fights with each other over how to prosecute the war in Gaza, the war in Lebanon against Hezbollah, and how to deal with Iran. In fact, it has been reported that we covered this reporting, but it's not original to us, that there were like basically knockdown, drag out screaming matches in the cabinet room when Netanyahu and Galant were battling over some of these major disagreements they have over how best to prosecute this war. So now you have to remember, Yoav Galant is a member of Bibi Netanyahu's Likud party. It's not like, Biden having a Republican as his defense secretary and then being mad at him or disagreeing. No, this wasn't a partisan divide. This was about policy, but it got personal. By all indications, it became personal. Netanyahu just completely lost trust with Galant, so much so, actually, it predates the war. You have to understand, as we reported on All Israel News at the time, that if you go back about a year and a half ago, Bibi Netanyahu fired Galant for the first time. You're like, what? Yes. Galant warned in the midst of the judicial reform debate. This was months before the October 7th invasion of 2023. But in the spring, Galant, as defense minister, warned publicly that the sharp internal divide inside Israel over whether to go with Netanyahu's judicial reform plan or not was so wreaking havoc inside the military that you had that he warned several things. You've got reservists in the Air Force and the Army who are saying, "I'm not showing up to serve, to fight, to defend the country if this judicial reform plan happens, because I feel like that is going to turn Israel into dictatorship." Now, regardless of I don't want to get into all the nuances of whether that analysis was true, but that's how people felt. That's how many Israelis felt, and that's how many reservists in the IDF felt. And so Galant was warning that the judicial reform debate was dividing Israel, even in the army, and it was creating an internal rift that was dangerous. Moreover, Galant warned at that time that the internal divisions inside Israel was making Israel look vulnerable to Israel's allies, to the Iranian regime, to Hezbollah, to Hamas, and he warned that this could invite an attack. Netanyahu was so incensed that Galant would say this publicly that he fired Galant. But what happened? By the way, Galant had been saying all these things privately for several months, but decided he had to go public. Netanyahu was furious, he fired him, and the next day, people got scared. They thought, wow, if you're going to fire your own defense minister, who's from your own political party, from your own political ideology, that looked dangerous to people. It looked crazy to many people, and the whole country erupted and shut down. There were strikes throughout the country and so forth. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis turned out in the street to protest that decision. And Netanyahu backtracked, and he decided, no, okay, fine, I won't fire Galant. But Yoav, you and I have to talk and figure this out together. And then came October 7th, okay? Now, those fights, the tensions had already been there, but then they really blew up during the debates inside the cabinet room over whether, or not whether, but how to prosecute the war in Gaza and in Lebanon. Well, now Netanyahu has decided, that's it, I've had enough of it. Galant, you're fired. It was a 3-minute conversation, and then Netanyahu put out a press release saying he's fired. Now you say, well, why would he do it now? Well, I will tell you that I think that a prime minister of any country, certainly Israel, has the right, in principle, to let a defense minister or any minister go if they don't see eye to eye and if they can't trust each other, right? You especially need a defense minister that you can trust in a time of war. So Netanyahu had the right to do it. He had the legal freedom to do it. The question is whether it was the right thing to do, but he did it because there are new disagreements that they're battling over, and Netanyahu wanted a fresh, he wanted to turn the page. He knew that there'd be a new government in Washington because the elections were happening, and he thought, I want unity in my government as I approach a new administration, whether it's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, okay? So that's why he fired him that night. But there was one other element. A few weeks ago, in September, actually, he was able to persuade a man named Gideon Sa'ar to bring his party, small political party of 4 people called New Hope, into the government. They had been in the government when the war started as part of a national emergency unity government. Then, after several months, Gideon Sa'ar decided to leave the Netanyahu government because there were a lot of internal disagreements. But Netanyahu was able to persuade him, look, I'm going to give you a lot of authority, Gideon. I'm going to put you in a major position. And I hear you on your disagreements, and we can work those out and negotiate those. But I would like you back into this, into my coalition, and I'll give you and your team a lot of influence. And Sa'ar decided for the sake of the country, that's the way he puts it. I mean, some people are cynical and say he did it for his own political purposes. But he'd already had his fallings out with Netanyahu, and he decided to come back. And his case is that he wanted to help Netanyahu win this war against Hamas, obviously, against Hezbollah, and to deal with Iran decisively. And he didn't want some of the fringe parties inside Netanyahu's government to be able to hold Netanyahu hostage or have high demands for things that might impede Netanyahu's ability to win the war. There had been talk when Sa'ar came into the government that Bibi Netanyahu was going to make Gideon Sa'ar the defense minister. Both Netanyahu and Sa'ar decided that was not the best move, but Sa'ar did come into the government, and then after about a month and a half went by, and they'd had more private discussions, Netanyahu decided to fire Galant, move the foreign minister, Israel Katz, who's very trusted by Netanyahu, from the foreign ministry over to the defense ministry. And then that would open up a spot at the foreign ministry, and Gideon Sa'ar would become the foreign minister. Now, in future articles, columns, and videos, we'll talk about who is Israel Katz, who is Galant, and how will they lead differently. But for right now, I just want you to understand Netanyahu has made a big decision, a dramatic decision, and he did it while most Israelis were paying attention, to the Iran threat on this side and to the elections. But don't make any mistake, this was not missed by the Israeli people. And I believe that Netanyahu's poll numbers are probably going to drop. He's been growing, he's been climbing in recent weeks and months because as Netanyahu has been achieving more successes against Hezbollah and Hamas and against Iran, Israelis are like, all right, we don't agree with him on everything, but he's doing a good job. But now I think Netanyahu's poll numbers might drop again because, look, who is leading the defense ministry in accomplishing the successes that Israel's had? Yoav Galant. Now, you might agree or disagree with Galant. Most of you probably don't know who he is because he's not a major name. But we've been covering him at All Israel News and we'll continue to do it. But my last point is, I think Netanyahu had every right to do it. I don't think the timing was right. But I don't want to be critical, but I'm just telling you, Israelis, many millions of Israelis are thinking, why? It doesn't make sense. Yes, Netanyahu, you have disagreements with Galant, but we're in the middle of a 7-front war. We're facing a major attack from Iran. And Yoav Galant is a trusted and respected former general. Israel Katz, the new defense minister, served in the military here, but he wasn't a general. And he isn't a former defense minister. His main national security role, aside from being the finance minister and I think education minister, he was the intelligence minister, but he isn't a major, IDF expert. So this is a risk. I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong. I'm saying that it's controversial. Galant will be a great foreign minister as far as I'm concerned. I'll tell you more about that later. But I just want to give you, this is a big story here, and I wanted to give you some context so you understand. And I want you to be praying for Netanyahu, praying for Israel Katz in his new position. We need him to succeed. Whatever you think, right or wrong, Netanyahu made the right decision, wrong decision. That's in some ways irrelevant for the fact that we need a defense minister who knows exactly what he's doing, hits the ground running, and knows how to lead the defense establishment. So we need to pray for Israel Katz. And of course, Israel's facing this massive assault of truth from every direction. That's why All Israel News does what we do. But having a new foreign minister who's excellent in English, who has Netanyahu's trust, and is a very effective communicator, that'll be very important. So let's be praying for Galant as well. And of course, we'll cover all of these figures and all of these dynamics more at All Israel News. So stay tuned. Thank you so much. I hope this video has been helpful and help you understand the dynamic. This is Joel Rosenberg, Editor-in-Chief of All Israel News, just outside of Jerusalem at All Israel News' headquarters. Thank you for watching.